Welcome to the NCDWI Guide podcast, where defenders of the Constitution assemble to prepare for courtroom battle and firm owners gather to develop marketing strategies that will revolutionize the practice of criminal defense. Here's your host, the NCDWI guy, Jake Minnick.
Hello, fellow freedom fighters, and welcome to episode 204 of the NCDWI Guy podcast. On today's episode, I have my friend Marlowe Rary, a warrior on the battlefield, continuing our series here, talking about young leaders in criminal defense in North Carolina. On today's episode, Marlowe shares his track to partnership at one of the most prestigious criminal defense firms in the state. He talks about what his firm is doing in terms of strategy on the marketing front, how the practice of criminal defense is changing today and looking down the road. Really enjoyed this conversation with Marlowe about all things law and business related to criminal defense, and I'm sure you will enjoy it as well. Well, Marlowe, I'm super pumped to have you on the podcast, sharing your wisdom and really diving into some interesting topics as, in my consideration, one of the young leaders of criminal defense in North Carolina. Your firm put together with some other people involved as well, but your firm put together an amazing CLE recently that was put out there both in Salisbury and in Silva, where I got to attend, and just some awesome lineup of speakers and really great content. And so it's cool to see you all giving back in the education space as well, but really kind of an interesting firm setup and amazing experience that you have in terms of the lawyers at your firm. So really excited to kind of dive in terms of how you landed there and have you share some of those insights with the audience.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. We especially, one of my law partners is Darren Jordan, who is I believe, past president of the state bar at this point. And so one of his staples and one of the things he's always told me is like, it doesn't matter what it costs for you to get the education and training that you want to go to. Whatever you want to go to, whenever you want to go to, we will pay for it and we will get that done for you. Thankfully, awesome. And luckily, like, we run a criminal defense CLE in Salisbury, and I think we've been doing that for about 10 to 15 years now straight
awesome.
For the local bar. And then we had our first CLE up in Silva this past winter because he has purchased a house up in Cullowhee. So he was like, these people up in Jackson County, they're starving for CLE.
Oh man, it was excellent.
Live CLE. So I was fortunate enough to be able to teach a session on restorations, revocations, and LDPs.
The nuts and bolts, man.
Yeah, nuts and bolts. That's what our CLEs are built on. It's like, if you walk into district criminal court or, superior court with a low-level felony, like, what do you need to know and how can you get it done?
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, I love that attitude in terms of the firm culture of education being so valued. For us at the office, our quarter-one core value is student mindset. That's what we're focusing on this quarter. But it's really cool to hear that is such a part of your culture, and I'd like to maybe dive a little bit more into that. But before we kind of get to where you ended up currently, give us a little bit of a background in the terms of, what made you want to become a lawyer in the first place and then ultimately end up in the criminal defense space.
So this is when I was in high school, um, I was not the greatest kid. I was smart. I made good grades. I had already gotten a scholarship to go to UNCW for teaching. Um, so like back when I was in high school, there was a program called the North Carolina Teaching Fellows. You basically paid for undergrad if you agreed to teach in the state for 4 years after you graduated. So I had already been accepted into that program and was going to Wilmington, and then I was not being the best person that I could be. So like I remember getting stopped by the police when I was with two of my black friends in high school, my senior year of high school, and it was pretextual. Like
Yeah.
they saw me driving them in my car. It was after a baseball game, so it would have been like later on it would have been about 10 o'clock at night. And we pulled into a gas station, and then we got stopped coming out. So um, that that experience was like not that's not right.
Yeah.
Like that should not have happened. Although, as lawyers, we know like pretext is
Happens all the time.
apparently fine,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
yeah. Anyway, not going to get on that soapbox, but, so that's how I initially like wanted to go because I didn't want other people to have that experience.
Yeah, that's really
Um,
cool. That's like the inspiration point.
yeah. And so I'm a second career lawyer because I did finish out my teaching. I taught for 6 years, two in Miami, Florida, four up here in Rowan County. And then when I was finishing my fourth year of teaching, my LSAT was about to expire. Nobody wants to take that thing twice. So I was like, I got to
What were you
apply.
teaching? What was the like prime subjects?
Most of my teaching career was middle school social studies, so seventh and eighth grade, which is a mixture of geography and North Carolina history.
Okay. And you know,
Yeah.
it's probably like a super challenging keeping kids at that age like engaged in the content. So, you know, in terms of capturing a jury's attention, maybe some good life skills. Do you have any like takeaways that you've been able to like take from the classroom into the courtroom?
I I say this all the time, that being a teacher and um, learning how to break down information into smaller, more digestible pieces has been the best thing for my jury, my trial skills.
Hmm.
Thankfully, I've been fortunate enough now to try. Uh, I want to say I've tried seven Superior Court. Well, I've had seven cases that were either resolved by verdict or by a motion to suppress in Superior Court, and I have only lost one of those cases. So
Wow, that's
six
wild.
and one.
Yeah, that's an impressive record.
I it's also like part of being a teacher is issue spotting,
Yeah.
right? Being able to break down those things is issue spotting for lawyers. And so I don't put up stuff in Superior Court that I don't really feel strongly about. Like, I have a good case here, I can win this. So I'm very fortunate to have been able to do that. I think I want to say like five of them have been not guilty verdicts in a jury, and all of those have, four out of the five have been DWIs.
Yeah, that's wild. That's, I mean, again, I think it's a so much of the jury strategy, but I think, to some extent, this applies with district court judges, is just being able to present information in a entertaining way. I mean, I don't know if that's like maybe the right word, but to make sure that like if there is an issue that is important, that this doesn't get lost in all of the like garbled mess that is, a superior court trial. I mean, the, volume of instructions and voir dire questions and all of these things that, jurors are just trying to figure out. I think a lot of times what is important here, like what am I supposed to be focusing in on? Like we have these, 8 pages of instructions. We heard, 6 hours of testimony. 2 of them were on horizontal gaze and nystagmus. I have no idea what any of that was about. Like, I mean, there's just like this, question of like, what am I supposed to be actually paying attention to? And I think that must have a really powerful effect in terms of that like past background in the education space.
Yeah, it's sort of a keep it simple, stupid
Yeah.
approach.
Yeah.
Like, I don't, if I get a law enforcement officer on the stand, like I don't badger them for hours at a time.
Yeah.
My cross examinations, like I'm in and out. I get what I need so that I can make my argument to the jury at the end. And then, they know that the jury sees me as being respectful to the law enforcement officer, and like it's the issue, it's not
Yes.
the people involved. My last, I like to give sort of colloquial metaphors for my cases. So, like my last DWI trial in Superior Court, my theme was if it looks like a duck and walks like a duck and talks like a duck, it must be a duck. But in reverse on mine, my guy, if he looks like he's not impaired, he talks like he's not impaired, and he acts like he's not impaired, then he must not be impaired. Although,
Yeah.
he had 6 on HGN, but yeah,
Yeah, I love that.
was,
I love that, given the theme and even in terms of, the keep it simple, stupid mindset. I mean, I think that's so powerful, even from for me, from like a self, uh, self-reflective point of view. Like if I can't explain it to myself, I'm not going to be able to communicate it to anybody else. And so sometimes it's like, you know, how am I making sure that I am wrapping my brain around whatever the argument is that I'm trying to convince others to buy into, in front of the district court bench? I really think that in and out model works so well, because I think that especially with young prosecutors, they're going off of this like DWI checklist that is taking forever, right? Like in all of these
yeah,
questions that are just not important, the judges up there, they're sitting through, 200 cases on the docket. They're looking at their watch. It's like, we got to move things. And so I think that when you're saving the court's time from needlessly, spending 30 minutes in a closing argument that could be done in 5, getting in and out of cross-examination, I do think that there's a lot of like value, for some district court judges just in that alone of like, I know this lawyer is going to come in, he's going to pick apart the issues that are important. He's not going to waste the court's time. And I appreciate that. Like, I mean, I don't know what that does in terms of decision making, but I think for some judges, just, not causing any unwarranted irritation by just sitting there hammering an issue that doesn't matter. I think that can make a difference. So
yeah, yeah, or certainly one that is not going to be effective with that particular judge.
yes, exactly.
Like,
Yeah. That's huge. Well, you are, in such a, again, like prestigious firm with amazing lawyers, a part of it. And so I'm curious, like coming out of law school, kind of how did you make that transition? Again, maybe actually, I think I cut you off in terms of going from education to law school, how you got into the area of criminal defense. So I guess we'll cross that bridge first, but then definitely interested in how you landed where you are currently.
Yeah. So when I came out of, our connection is Charlotte School of Law.
Yes.
The infamous now, but we have great lawyers and great leaders in the law that came from Charlotte. As poorly as the school was operated from a business perspective,
Yes.
That is a totally different podcast.
Yes.
But
I think at some point
but
it'd be fun to do a deep dive on that front. But yeah,
yeah,
as Ron Shook affectionately refers to the school as the prestigious and now defunct, that's my go-to at this point. So
so when I got out of Charlotte, I actually I was in what was called the civil advocacy program in Charlotte, because I think I had left that sort of, I want to do criminal defense based on my experience in high school,
yeah,
to like, I want to be a lawyer to make a lot of money.
yeah,
And so I was in the civil advocacy program because I wanted to do personal injury law, because that's really who you see like making a lot of money, at least on TV. So I got into a firm here in Salisbury called Wallace and Graham. They have done large mass tort litigation. They did the hog farm cases down in eastern North Carolina. So I did not really participate in the hog farm litigation when I was there. I was responsible for the Duke coal ash cases that were around and about. Super interesting, like scientific stuff, like in terms of background and what we're trying to prove and like medical determinations. But I was in an office like 5 days a week, 12 hours a day, looking at a spreadsheet, and it was not what I didn't enjoy that part of it. But what I did enjoy was about my Duke Clash cases. I did enjoy the people, because, those folks who live around, most of these Duke plants are people who live around the lake, and they live around the plant, and they worked for Duke Energy
yes,
for long periods of time, but they're like salt to the earth people, just good people. And that's what I really enjoyed about it. So after 2 years there, I left and started my own firm. I had a great mentor by the name of Dan Francis, who was also there at one point, but then opened his own firm. And he practices in Davidson County, does railroad work comp, which is like
interesting.
a super duper niche area.
Yeah, that sounds like it
Um,
is.
so he was a great mentor to me, and he was like, a lot of these places, these smaller counties, they have court appointed lists where you're not in a public defender's office, but you can get on the court appointed list. And if nothing else, it's going to keep the lights on and allow you to build your practice. So I opened my own firm, got on our court appointed list here in Rowan County, and started working on my business, doing criminal defense, personal injury, and some family domestic law. Because when you're a solo, you got to take a little more than maybe you would when you're first starting,
Yes.
because you got to pay bills. So I started my firm. I was doing criminal defense here in Rowan County. At one particular time, Darren Jordan at the time was a state bar president or vice president when I came along. But he had all those responsibilities, but he was also doing all the district criminal court for our practice. And it was literally like killing him because, we have one of the largest volume practices, probably the largest volume practice in Rowan County in terms of the number of cases that we do. And so he needed someone to come in because at the time he's on the federal court appointed list and he's doing federal cases. And, I think my first year that I was here, he tried a murder case. So like he's doing a lot more than just second degree trespass in district criminal court. So, Darren had approached me about coming on and becoming a lawyer, an associate with their firm. And so that's how I sort of got to being offered a position at what is now Whitley, Jordan, Inge Rary.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think it's so powerful to have that kind of like jump into your own space past experience. I think that that's probably something that's really valuable in terms of kind of more of the managing role that you're kind of like moving into maybe at this point, like having, some of those real like early firm struggles are really a learning experience that you can't describe until you've actually lived it yourself. So I think that is probably a really powerful background. But yeah, I guess in terms of, what your position and kind of what you're focusing on at the firm now, speak a little bit about that. Cause again, I think it's really powerful for young lawyers to hear about, how teaming up with some really established attorneys could really be maybe an alternative to just kind of like starting from scratch, hanging your own shingle, which I think is what a lot of criminal defense lawyers do, whether that's coming out of civil, coming out of the DA's office, coming out of a public defender's office, whatever that like kind of background is, into hanging the shingle, straight out of law school. There are some great alternatives, I think, to that. So yeah, talk a little bit about kind of what you're doing currently at the firm.
Yeah. So I came in as an associate. I practice with, we now have 4 other lawyers besides me, but when I came, it was myself was as the associate, and then we had 3 partners. Our senior founding partner is Cecil Whitley. He was 50th year lawyer last year. Just turned 80 years old today.
Happy birthday.
So he's a legend in Rowan County. Like, if you get a speeding ticket in Rowan County and you're from Rowan County, you ask, hey, I got the speeding ticket, like who do I need to call? They're going to say, call Cecil.
That's so cool.
So, I knew that because I had talked to him in my younger days. So I knew what like a powerhouse Cecil was. Yeah. And Cecil had also known my grandfather way back when. So he knew who I was and sort of what kind of family I came from. We also have Darren Jordan, who was president of the state bar, now past president of the state bar. He is a really, really great criminal defense lawyer and really a great person in terms of he wants to bring people together. And like, I think part of his mission with the state bar was he likes to bring other lawyers together and say, look, this is our profession. Like, a lot of times we're on the opposite side of things, but we can still be friends and courteous and colleagues. And so he has gotten a group of lawyers together, and it's like a traveling exposition.
That's so cool.
He'll have dinners in Asheboro and Salisbury and Concord and Charlotte and Greensboro. And we just, get together as lawyers in those areas, and we share war stories and ideas and talk about business. And
so powerful.
He was really fundamental in that. Yeah. And then my other law partner is Robert Inge, who is a state board specialist in family and domestic law, a real powerhouse for domestic trial lawyer in Rowan County. I would be remiss if I didn't say Darren is also a board certified specialist in criminal law. And so I came in thinking like, if you're from Rowan County, like, Cecil, it's like, who else would you rather practice law with and learn DWI and speeding tickets and that sort of stuff from than like, the man, the myth, the legend.
Yeah, that's so awesome.
I ended up starting as an associate, just hit the ground running. Like when I got here, I think Darren probably thought that I had a lot more experience than I actually did. So he just like hands over these district court files to me and is like, here you go.
Yeah.
And although I had, done my own thing for a year, like it takes probably 6 to 9 months to really build up a caseload on your court appointed list.
Yeah.
So I didn't have that much experience.
Yeah, you're not going to court. You're not going to court every day at that point.
I'd never tried a case until I got here, and like I get handed all these cases at the same time, and it's sort of like, I have them as resources, but coming in as like the associate, you don't want to ask too many questions because you don't want to feel like you're that inexperienced. So you just take it and run with it.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of value in that too. I think that just like having to, again, sink or swim has its learning lessons, as does like a more sophisticated training model. But I do think that there is some value in the sink or swim model. So,
so I took it and ran, and my first 3 years, I ended up having, I think, 3 or 4 jury trials in Superior Court, cases that I had appealed from district court because I lost or didn't want to. Some cases you lose in front of a district court judge, and you're like,
no, we got to appeal that.
You didn't see my issue. So maybe the jury will. And in some cases, you tell your client, like, there is no way in the world this district court judge is going to find you not guilty.
Yeah.
But you've got a good issue for a jury to
100%.
decide on. So I chose some good cases to take up there. I ended up winning. And I think that was the sort of the push for the partners to then make me a partner after. So I think I became a partner in 2021 after being here 3 years. So now I'm a partner.
Yeah.
And have been for the last 3 years.
Which again is a typically speaking, I would say, and again, this is maybe a little bit of a all over the map in terms of smaller firms, because it just is very firm to firm dependent. But that is a very fast time frame, and I think that ability to just go in and be hungry about it, get things going, pushing the envelope, especially at a firm where, again, seemingly taking things to trial seems to be kind of like a part of y'all's DNA. Like, I mean, there's something that, is very much, in that educational vein, and like, hey, we've really got to like push the envelope a little bit. So I think that there's, if there's anything else that you think maybe was something that stood out, I think it would be helpful for associate attorneys that are listening in to kind of like be thinking about like what would make me a valuable asset at the firm, such that partnership could be part of the conversation.
Mm-mm. I think part of, I don't know that it's what necessarily that I did, but I think what helped me was I didn't come into practicing law straight out of law school,
Yeah.
straight out
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
undergrad, straight out of law school, straight into practicing in a firm. I had that other career experience before I was in a law firm. So I knew like expectations for the work career environment.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
it's a different, when I graduated law school, I was 31, 32. And then started working here at 35. So I was already seasoned
Yes.
by the time I got here. And so I think that age and just understanding, how the working world works made a difference. I guess the insight that I would give to young lawyers is like pick the right firm, because
Mm.
I think that in our firm we all have very similar uh, personalities and not necessarily interests, but we get along so well as a group of people.
Yeah.
Right, like I've got the Pinehurst thing on my mantle back here. So I play golf. I watch NASCAR. I drove to Atlanta for a NASCAR race on Sunday and drove back in time for Courtroom Warriors. So
That's
like
awesome.
that's my thing. Darren is a trout fisherman. He goes trout fishing up in the mountains all the time. Rob rides motorcycles. So like we all have our different interests, but we get along well as people.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And you could just tell when you fit in with a group of people. So I think it's sort of that trusting your gut. Like if your personalities are clashing with partners in the firm, like there are other places out there that you will fit into, and don't be afraid to take that step, because you never know. Like I thought civil was my thing,
Yeah.
and then I started my own firm, walked into district court, and I'm like, this is the best thing. I do not, I swear to you, like that saying of, do something you love, you never work a day in your life. Like
Yeah.
that is absolutely true. Like I do
Yeah.
not consider district court to be work
Yeah.
at all. Like I never have the Monday blues. Like this is amazing. But
That's awesome. Yeah, that's so true.
you just like don't be afraid to like take that leap and try new things, especially when you're younger and you're not on that like partnership level, because you have valuable skills and things that you bring to the table. So
Yeah, that's
just
awesome. I think along those same lines. I mean, that's really powerful. In addition to kind of not feeling stuck at the firm that you're at, if you have started your own firm and it's just you love practicing law, or maybe you love the marketing aspect of kind of having your own firm. Again, I think that one of the things that we get stuck in is like, well, this is what I'm gonna do until I die, right? Like, or until, like until retirement, whatever it might be. And, if our firm is, a year old, 5 years old, 10 years old, there's still always that opportunity to go out and partner up with somebody else. And so I think that the more that you're getting after it on your own cases in court, but then being able to also evaluate other lawyers in your county or in your area, people that you meet at CLEs, whatever it might be. I mean, there's just so many opportunities to basically say, hey, you're killing it in this county. I get over here every once in a blue moon, but I'm crushing it over here in this neighboring county, and I see you over here every once in a while. Why don't we like team up? We'll share the caseload. I mean, there's obviously a billion different ways that you can partner up with somebody, or maybe go in, and say, hey, I really love practicing, love being in the courtroom. Not so much into the business side of things. Would love to, kind of talk about coming aboard at your awesome, law firm as an associate. Like, I think that there are just so many kind of partnership opportunities that are left on the table. Everything from, associate partner to referral relationships that are just kind of not getting like appropriately utilized. So I think that is such a cool, such a cool insight in terms of, just recognizing that the space that you were in was just, not what you had thought the law to be. And then as soon as you get into that district court space, it's like, oh, this is what I was born for.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. Well, I think in terms of, just kind of what you're focused on now in a lot of ways is kind of, from our past conversations, the firm management side of things, and trying to kind of take a little bit more of a role in that. And so talk about just some of the growth strategies that you guys have kind of been utilizing here over the last several years.
So our growth strategy has really revolved around, at least historically, adding an attorney who can take on more work and do, because our court appointed list provides like instant value, instant income. It's easier to take on an associate, and then they can bring in their own business after you've done some cases, even for court appointed clients. Like, your name gets out there, and then your appointed clients, they're like, well, we don't want to take the chance of like getting just anybody. Like, we want you. And so their second case, they'll come and they'll retain you privately. So sort of our growth strategy has been to, we use a lot of interns. We have currently an intern that is a senior at Catawba College here. She's been accepted into Campbell this coming fall. So we take in a lot of college interns, but also law school interns. So we've had
that's awesome.
Intern from Campbell the last 2 summers. He'll probably be back this summer. And so I think we are probably moving in the direction where we're going to hire him to expand and grow our footprint. And other than that, we don't really have a growth strategy, which is terrible to say, but
I think
that's just historically how it's been. Our founding partner, and I would venture to say, if you're over the age of 50 or 55, 60, in that range, and practicing law, like you come from a different time period than we come from. And so like advertising it wasn't even allowed when they first started practicing. And so like sending letters to people who have speeding tickets or DWIs or felonies or whatever, none of that was allowed when they first started. And so we are still very much a firm that you would not believe our advertising budget for the amount of revenue that we bring in. It's
That's awesome. Yeah, no.
like absurd in terms of like half of 1% of our revenue is spent on advertising, which is insane given what our revenue is. And like part of me moving into more of the managing partner role is like, how do I create synergy with our website, our social media, bring in some advertising, like, shoot out some Google ads and Facebook ads and whatnot. Like, how do I actually grow this thing into what it can be? Because right now we only practice in Rowan County. We don't take cases anywhere else, but we have a great referral network for other counties. So I guess my growth strategy when I get to that position of actually being managing partner is like, I see us as being at least a regional firm, if not a statewide firm. And I think we have the ability to do that because our connections around the state, largely through like Darren's being state bar president. But I think also that lawyers in general are getting old. And so when you already have a firm, it would be easier for us to go in and say to 75-year-old lawyer that is practicing in Davidson County and say, hey, we would like to consume your firm. Like, we will keep your receptionist and your paralegal employed.
Yep.
We will make you of counsel for, however long you want to continue practicing, so long as you will show law school graduate bar person who just passed the ropes for the next 5 years. Like, introduce them to the people that he needs to know in Davidson County, who the clerks, the DAs, like, what are the policies? What can you do? What can't you do? What are these judges' tendencies? Those are the things you need to know in district court. And like a seasoned lawyer is who needs to tell those people that. I mean, I could go up there and learn those things and then teach that person. But if you already have a seasoned person who's already got a network of clients that you can like bring in, I think that's where I would like to take us in the future. It hasn't been, really haven't had those conversations among partners, or those are just sort of internal thoughts of mine about how we can grow the firm internally, and and I guess the reason I think that way is there's a lot of talk in North Carolina about these legal deserts, and Rowan County, Davidson County, Randolph County, a lot of these, what I would say are 75,000 to 200,000 population counties are dying for new and fresh lawyers.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
The age of their lawyers are 60 and up. And so
Yeah.
there's
100%.
plenty of business in these places to like go to, but you also have to find the lawyer who will go there.
Yeah, for sure.
Right?
Yeah.
Because everybody
Yeah.
coming out of law school wants to go to Charlotte. They want to go to
Yeah.
Winston. They want to go to Wilmington or Raleigh because that's where, the cool one happening. They want to go to Asheville.
Yeah.
And because that's where things are cool and happening. And like, I would
Yeah.
love to. Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, I
No,
moved from back home to Salisbury, so I fully understand that. But there's a lot of business out there to be had
there
if
is.
you're willing to get involved in the community and like there's something to be said for practicing in a smaller town. Like when my wife and I moved back to Salisbury from Charlotte, it was, do you want to be a little fish in a big pond, or do you want to be a big fish in a little pond? And when you are a lawyer, like you are already a big fish, or people
That's
think
true.
you're a big fish because you went to law school. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
there
That is
aren't
so
that
true.
many of
Yeah.
us
Yeah.
in the grand scheme of things. So that's sort of my growth strategy for our
Yeah.
firm. Whether it
Oh, that's
comes
all.
to fruition or not, I have no idea, but um, that's
Man, I think it's
how I'm
something
moving
too
forward.
that's probably going to be constantly evolving. I think there's so much to unpack there. One couple of like takeaways on my end are just kind of further points. You're talking about getting in interns from college, interns that are in law school to be part of the firm. I mean, there's just so much value in that. I think it's a great way to kind of give somebody experience. We have done paid and unpaid internships depending on kind of like how much experience maybe you're kind of getting versus just kind of like being office administration, which we generally have paid positions on that front. But it's definitely a great way to get somebody experience. It's a great way to get help at your firm at low cost. It's also a great way to evaluate people for more permanent positions. So my partner, again, down in Wilmington, he started as an intern and crushed it in that role, with different tasks, not running in and out of the courtroom every day. That was not part of his assignment, but you get to evaluate personalities. Amy, who is our just ruthless lawyer here in the Asheville office, started as an intern in college and then came back during law school years. And there was like that evaluation period. We've got several admin team members at the office currently that are either in college, or that's how we got to know them, was through internships. So it's a great way to be able to evaluate somebody when there is no kind of no obligation to continue. I think one thing that a lot of lawyers do badly is hire, and that's definitely been our a part of our like learning experiences, like trying to find the right person. And it's so hard to do that in the interview process. So one thing that an internship does nicely is you get to see somebody for a 3-month period of time. You kind of get to like make a good connection, get to know that person through lunches and in office, back and forth. And ultimately at the end of that 3 months, if it's like, this isn't somebody we want to kind of like have be a part of the team, it's like, all right, you part ways, and it's all smiles, and I'll write a recommendation, whatever it might be. Like there's no hard feelings typically in that, and no lost juice. But if it's somebody that you think would be a long-term fit, you really get that like longer evaluation period than just a phone call and a follow-up interview. And it's like, all right, boom, now we're offering a year-long salary. And if things don't work out, now it's going to be awkward if we have to like terminate. So there's just a huge benefit to me in terms of those like short-term evaluation periods. And then the other thing I kind of wanted to just echo was you were talking about, the old school of lawyering when it comes to marketing and not, not doing all of the advertising and, letters, Google campaigns, all of these different things. And one of the like benefits of being established, as a lawyer that's been practicing for 30, 40 years is you have this book of business that is just built up through all of those like years of sweat equity. And the best client that walks into the door is either a past client or a referred client from a potential client side of things, because they're the most likely to hire you. If somebody else is sending them your way, that person is inclined to hire you. If you've helped them in the past, they're inclined to hire you. So again, from this kind of like what makes sense for lawyers in terms of joining up with somebody that's been, they're practicing for a long time. Maybe you bring some of these, from your year or two of hanging your own shingle, some of these new ways that you've had to like get hungry and go find clients through the world of Google, through Avo or LinkedIn, or however it is that you're kind of getting clients to give you a call. You go in and partner up with somebody that's got this amazing book of business, this amazing brand that is already established. Those two things are very symbiotic, because again, for the law firm that's established and been doing it forever, they don't really have to worry about Google. I mean, it could help the bottom line, but there's no necessity of doing that. And so again, like I think that there's a lot of advantages in terms of that, like, joint marketing efforts, so to speak, of the referral business for somebody that's been doing it for 40 years, or, even 15 or 20 is a long time to have been practicing. And then somebody that is kind of got a little bit more in the way of social media, ad space, blogging, whatever, podcasting, however it is that, you're trying to get your name out there. There's a real symbiotic relationship that can exist that, again, I think is just being underutilized. So that's really cool to hear that from y'all's perspective.
Yeah. Following up on like the moving an intern into a paid position, right? Like, it is very difficult to read a resume, interview one time, and say this person is a right fit, because you can pull anybody in any one interview. But that like summer internship, it's not going to take you all summer to figure out whether this person is a good fit. It usually is like in the first week,
Yeah,
you're like,
for sure.
Okay, this person fits with our firm culture and it's going to work. Or you're like, this person does not fit with our firm culture. When is this summer going to be over?
That's so true. Yeah.
But it is not very quickly, but you can't get it in just like an interview, resume interview.
Yeah. And we have in our employment contracts with both staff and attorneys, basically like a 90-day evaluation period, but there's just a different like level of angst, or however you might have to convey it, in terms of having to terminate somebody that has like this long-term contract or kind of employment offer after a 90-day period, versus somebody where the anticipation is they're there for 90 days. Like, it's just a total different feeling that goes into both of those things. But you're still getting the same feedback, in terms of like, is this going to be a good fit? And again, there's been people that have been great interns and we're like, man, we'd love you to stay long. And they're like, nope, I've got to go back to, school, or I'm headed off to law school. And so like, there is a limitation there to some extent, but it has been, again, really valuable way of evaluating people for more full-time positions.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, in terms of, kind of the challenges that are out there kind of facing small firms in maybe particularly the criminal defense area currently, what are you guys seeing? But as you talk with your partners and are looking at the legal market, what are some of the biggest challenges facing solo and small firms on the criminal defense?
I think we talked about a little bit about this in our sort of pre-podcast chat, but I think from in an immediate perspective, like not necessarily challenges in running a small firm, but a challenge in practicing criminal defense right now. I think that any criminal defense lawyer would tell you right now it's a very challenging environment because of our Supreme Court makeup, and just the decisions coming down from our Supreme Court are very, very anti-defense defendant. And so that is a challenge because from a practical perspective, we have to be able to advise our clients, like, I might think you have a great suppression issue on this search warrant, but I don't, if the state is offering you X and you've got this great issue, but the Supreme Court might come back and say, yeah, that's wasn't as good as issue as you thought, Mr. Rary. Like, you have to be able to adequately advise your clients of that. And just like our Supreme Court makeup right now is just not great for criminal defense. And so that is like our practice area hurdle or challenge right now. From a small business or a business perspective, two real critical issues, I think, are one, in North Carolina, like, there's been a lot of talk in lowering the DWI standard from a 0.08 to a 0.04. I personally think that would probably expand the DWI business because you can go to any craft brewery and drink half a beer and blow a 0.04. And so that would theoretically expand business because more people would be charged at a 0.04. But you also have a lot of rumors and talk from companies that run ignition interlock, saying that the NHTSA, National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, is pushing for ignition interlock devices to be installed on new cars. And if that comes to fruition, which by all accounts I could see that happening in the next 10 to 15 years, like, DWI stuff, well, alcohol related DWIs are going to go out the window. And DWI work for us in our district criminal court practice is probably, I don't know the number exactly, but I would say it's at least like 40% of our revenue for district criminal court practice. So
yeah, I think it's like 60 for us. So it's a big volume.
That's scary.
Yeah, it is scary.
So I think that those are both challenges. Obviously, it would take a long time for the ignition interlock stuff to cycle through. So, I turned 40 in June. I don't think by the time I'm sort of entering that retirement phase, it might just be starting to take hold. But certainly if I'm wanting to build a firm that is going to last generations that I can pass on to my children, that is certainly a concern for the firm moving forward. And so, like, how do you diversify your offerings but still sort of like you, Jake, you're the DWI guy. Like, how do you keep it niche? But if your niche goes away, like,
that's a big
what are you
problem.
going to do?
Yeah, it's a big problem. I mean, we're definitely thinking through that. I mean, I think that the federal like mandate for these kind of like interlock cars, I want to say it's like 2030 that cars coming off the line like for consumer should have this. I think for if it's earlier than that by a couple of years for the semi trucks, right? Like they want to make sure that you're not having these tractor trailers getting driven down the road and commercial DUIs that are way more dangerous. I mean, again, obviously, from their perspective, any of this is dangerous, but that's kind of the first line. But the technology is being created, and again, even from like looking at it from a kid's standpoint, or thinking about your kids, like I think one of the reasons why this technology will take off relatively quickly is people will be like, I want that in my kid's car going to college. Like I want this, I want this technology in there for my 16-year-old that just got their license, right? I mean, like that's going to be
100%.
major selling point. And so once it's in some cars, it's just like with all technology that we have, it becomes
The takeover.
the takeover cheaper, right? Like as soon as it starts getting implemented, it becomes, a touch screen in a car used to be like this wizardry, it's like, wow, that is wow. Like you gotta, but now it's everything, it doesn't matter what model or make. I mean, every new car coming off the line has these, detailed maps, and that's just part of the technology getting cheaper. So I do think that is something that will, vastly change the industry. I think one thing that we, have the ability maybe to try to like think about as a bar, with potentially a lowering of the alcohol concentration, to a 0.04 standard, if that were to come about. I really do think that at some point we need to have a little bit more of a pushback in terms of a program for first offenders to have their DWI dismissed or reduced, to have some sort of a opportunity, 10 years down the road, even if there's no reduction or dismissal, to have an expunction for a, first and only offense of DWI. And I think that might be, some sort of a potential like joint selling point of like, we understand that the standard that is getting set is low. We don't want a kid that has a, beer, in their freshman year of college to have a DWI on their record because they went through a checkpoint and blew a 0.04. Like there's something that just seems a little bit like, when you look at all of the other charges that can be dismissed and expunged without thought, there may be some ability to push a little bit on that front. So I know that a couple of years ago seemed to be something that was maybe getting thrown out there a little bit is, can we have some sort of a first offender program? And that maybe is a place where we could, as a defense bar from a statewide angle, try to gain some traction on a little bit for people that just make that one bad mistake and need a break. So
Yeah, very, very valid point. Like there needs to be a trade-off because, we also are businesses that contribute to tax revenue, and if we are going out of business, the state is losing funds in that sort of area. It sort of takes me back to, there's lots of talk I've always about legalization of marijuana. And I tell my family and my friends all the time, like, I personally believe that marijuana should be legal, but if it ever came up for a referendum to like put it to the vote of the people of North Carolina, I would never vote for it because that's not in my business interest for it to be legal unless they were going to criminalize something else, or if there was sort of a tit for tat with the legalization of marijuana, because, like 5% of my revenue is marijuana cases, or whatever the number is. Like, it just
You
wouldn't
may
make
start to
sense
see
for
a
me
lot
to
more drug
register.
impaired driving cases. I mean,
Yeah.
that's something that I feel like, again, with the heavy emphasis on the uh, safety features going into vehicles, it's kind of like, well, where do you put, what is the next stage that the state focuses in on? And, at this point, drug impaired driving is, I would say, not a huge percentage of the charges statewide for driving while impaired, but it's an increasing problem with the availability of prescription medications and, legalized or not, kind of increased opportunity to get marijuana in various form, cannabis in various forms. So I mean, I do think that there is probably going to be at some point a little bit more of a return to the, if not drug recognition expert, a little bit more of a return to, some sort of additional like training on drug impaired driving, a ride or something along those lines, because that seems to have like fallen by the wayside. I don't know what happened, but that seems to have just like basically been like, we're not spending our money on this anymore as agencies.
Yeah, I think I would venture to say, I guess, like, law enforcement agencies are having such a hard time staffing in the first place.
Yes.
Like, they don't want to put additional training requirements
Yeah.
on
Well,
their new
especially if it's
recruits.
going to be like a 2-year process, right? Like this person may not even be here in 18 months. So we're not going to
Yeah,
spend
for sure.
all this resources. Yeah, I
Sure.
think that's for certain. Well, as we kind of close things down, I think one of the things I was talking with Ryan Stowe about the amazing local bar that you guys have in Rowan County. I really do think it's like a special bar. I'm biased. I feel that way about Buncombe County, but from an outsider's perspective, Rowan is doing something. You guys are doing something right. So, what do you think for listeners out there across the state? What is something that can be done to improve the criminal defense bar at the local level?
From our perspective, like, and this is just like going back to doing those CLEs, uh, once you get it started, like the local CLE, and you have a process of implementing those things, like, it's not that difficult to, get it certified by the state bar, so that you're getting credits, and finding people who want to teach them
Yeah.
is relatively easy. Like, people want to be helpful.
Yeah.
It's just sort of getting it off the ground. So, like, providing local CLEs instead of, this is no knock on NCAJ or any of that. Like, I'm a member of NCAJ. I've been to their CLEs. Um, they do great. They do great things, but there is also something to be said for local bars putting on CLEs that have local issues discussed,
Yes.
right? Like, there are things that happen in every jurisdiction that are unique to that particular jurisdiction. And those local CLEs are the times when you can have those conversations, like, what are you guys seeing in front of Judge Smith, or whomever? How does Judge Smith rule on this particular type of motion? And so I think every judicial district should have their own CLE at least once throughout the year, to focus on those unique needs of that particular community. Um, Also in Rowan, I'm not sure if Ryan mentioned this, but we also have sort of a what we call the local Rowan County Defense Bar Roundtable. It meets once a month, every other week, whenever really we want to get together.
He definitely shared the lunch special.
Yeah.
So
which is good.
Yeah,
The
it's
same
great.
thing. Like, what are you seeing going on in the courthouse? How can we make this stuff better? It's just sort of staying in the loop and not isolating yourself from your colleagues, which is easy to do when you're practicing law, especially if you're a solo, because you are oftentimes receptionist, paralegal, lawyer, businessman. You are everything, and so it can be easy to get isolated. But those it doesn't take much to come to a lunch. You got to eat anyway for an hour and talk about local issues. So
I love that. Yeah.
I think that is how we improve. I do think just being friendly to the folks in the bar. This is a great example. Ryan Stowe and myself are very good friends, right? Like, we hang out with each other. He brought wings to my Super Bowl party. Like, we are really good friends. They come to the house during the summer for the pool, whatever. But we are also competitors, right? Ryan is in Rowan County. He is crushing it. He is eating into our margin of volume tremendously. And so you have that natural feel of competition with other local criminal defense lawyers. But at the end of the day, there is enough business out there for everybody. And it doesn't
100%.
have to be a competition. Like, if you go in on an admin Friday traffic court, right? Lawyers might have 20% of the entire admin docket that are in there. So there are 80% of people that are just representing themselves. Like, there is plenty of business to go around. And so it's not like we have friendly competition. Like, we joke with each other, but we also go to dinner together and talk about our businesses from our own perspectives. And Ryan and I are definitely there's enough business to go around for everybody. And so, yeah, we're competition, but at the end of the day, being friends with the people that you're going to be with 8 hours a day in your working environment is super important. So just be friendly with people in your local bar, introduce yourself, and that collegiality will influence them to help you in the future with issues that come up, or it just breaks the ice. Like, I have lawyers all the time, more experienced lawyers than I am. They'll come up to me all the time and ask me about driving records because they know I do more traffic related stuff than anybody else. So they'll ask me those questions. And it's if I were standoffish or not as willing to help them, they wouldn't even feel comfortable asking the question.
Yes.
So make people comfortable, be friendly, we're all in this together. And that is what's going to lift local bars and the criminal defense in the future.
I love it. Yeah, I think that's so good. And especially just echoing that educational point again, the CLE that you guys hosted that was kind of duplicated over here in Silva this past year was phenomenal. I've gone several times. The Henderson County Bar south of us has done pretty regular CLEs on criminal defense. And so that's been fantastic. So yeah, 100% echo that localized CLE. I feel like a culture of education, if you can kind of get if you can get a CLE off the ground, which again, once you've done it, it's not as intimidating as it may have first seemed. Once you get a CLE off the ground, I feel like other initiatives become easier to organize, right? Like, to kind of bring everybody into the same table. So I think that's such a powerful piece. I think that if we could bring that education into the more local space, that'd be a huge benefit across the state.
It's also good for business, right? Though,
yeah, for sure. Yeah,
for
sure.
These
Yeah.
people come, you teach at the CLE, they consider you a subject matter expert.
Yes, 100%.
And they refer you a case. Like it all works in conjunction with one another.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. And I think again, when you're doing this at the local level, you are bringing in practitioners from other practice areas, because it's just like, this is local, it's reasonable cost. I can go to it in person. I can, sit around and talk with some of my friends in the bar. So like, I mean, it brings in people from other practice areas besides criminal defense, even if that's kind of what the subject matter is organized around. So I think it can definitely be like that networking opportunity beyond just the criminal defense realm. But yeah, Marlowe, thank you so much for all the points this afternoon, and kind of sharing a little bit about your practice and your current position in the firm. Yeah, definitely. I think education is so critical to us, not only within our own firms, as obviously it is a part of your culture, but in the local bar space. So I love the emphasis on that from maybe we'll call you a recovering teacher. I don't know, like, what the appropriate, but
I had actually just talked about going back over to like Catawba and doing some adjunct. So like,
once you're a
it's
teacher,
in
you never
your blood,
leave.
you just,
No, you
you
can't.
can't get it
You'll
out.
be doing
You can't
that
get it
until
out.
you die. Like, that'll be beyond the law side of things. Teaching is in your system once you got it going.
Yeah.
So, well, thanks so much, Marlowe. It's been sweet. I love the conversation, man.
Thanks for having me, Jake.